Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody, and welcome to Pangolin, the Conservation Podcast. The show dedicated to exploring and amplifying the world's underappreciated conservation stories. The stories that inspire me, and I hope will inspire you too. I'm your host, Jack Baker, and today I am joined by three wonderful people, Eleanor, Alex, and Hannah from the Lancashire Wildlife Trust. They are here to discuss their involvement with the LWT's Youth Council, talk about how it promotes diversity and conservation, and share how its members are making huge waves in the conservation space. And when I say huge, I'm not over-exaggerating. They've been talking at COP, and I'm genuinely so impressed and slightly jealous of everything they've done. It's so impressive, and I cool, and I can't wait for you to learn more about it. We also chat about some of their longer-term goals, how they feel their involvement with the LWT has helped them grow, and some of their favourite underappreciated British species and environments. Peat Bogs, we're looking at you. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Welcome back to the show. I am now joined by Eleanor, who is the Youth Advocacy Officer, and Hannah and Alex, who are members of the Wildlife Trust for Lancashire, Manchester and Merseyside's Wildlife Trust Youth Council. So a bit of a mouthful, but a really interesting mouthful, doing really interesting, exciting work. And I'm so glad to have you all here today to chat about that exciting and interesting and amazing work. So thank you all for making the time to speak to me today. I think because there are three of you, what a good thing to do would be is instead of kind of being like, oh, I'm going to spend ages introducing each of you or whatever it is, it might be good for each of you to introduce yourselves a little bit and tell the listeners a little bit about you, who you are, and what your involvement is with the Lancashire. I'm going to mess it up so many times throughout this podcast. The Lancashire, Manchester, and North Merseyside Wildlife Trust Youth Council is. So, I guess shall we start with Eleanor? Do you want to start us?
Yeah, sure. To shorten it, you can just say LWT or the Lancashire Wildlife Trust if you want, rather than...
That's very slick. I like that.
So I'm Eleanor. Yeah, I'm the first youth advocacy officer, actually. And I came into post in April of 2021. And my primary role is to promote what we call youth voice and youth governance at our organisation. And it helps young people. So when I mean young people, I work between 11 and 25-year-olds. So helping young people get into nature, have an active role in kind of conservation decision making within our organisation. And also skill building and campaigning, political campaigning. So kind of giving the other side to conservation along with the kind of the practical skills. And one of the main parts of my role is managing our amazing youth council. So they sit on the youth council for 1 year, but they can stay for up to 2 years. So both Hannah and Alex are actually our only two returning youth council members who were selected. And I'll let them tell you more about it.
Yes, that's perfect. What a good transition into the next person. So shall we go Hannah next? Did you want to expand on what Eleanor has kind of teased there?
Yeah, so I'm Hannah, I'm 14, and yeah, and this is my second year on the Youth Council. The Youth Council's kind of the first step I've taken into conservation. I've always been interested in it, but this is kind of the first thing I've done. And it's been really interesting to see sort of the different aspects of conservation and also get to do things really hands-on.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and we'll talk a lot about that throughout because I'm really interested to find out what all of the different activities you do are, because I had a little look at the website in preparation. It seems like there's a lot going on, so I'm sure we will talk a lot about all the kind of practical, interesting things that you're up to. And Alex, last but not least, of course, Alex, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
I'm just halfway through my second year of the Youth Council. Last year I was just trying to get stuck in and get more involved in conservation, and this year I've taken on more of a political lead because it's something that I'm really passionate about. I am now on the board of trustees representing the youth council as well, and something I'm really proud of. So we had to go through an interview process with the CEO of the Lancashire Wildlife Trust, and that was genuinely really scary. But Eleanor messaged me a couple of days later and told me that I had got the job basically. I was so proud of myself. Being able to represent my friends on the youth council and sharing on people's ideas on the board of trustees is it in such an important job, and I'm really proud that I get to do it and represent everyone.
That does sound very exciting, really, really exciting, and I will be picking your brains about that because that seems like a very big and important role. And I'd love to hear about your experiences in it a little bit, kind of later on. But now that we've kind of met everyone, I feel like in the UK, everyone knows about the wildlife trusts that are around. There seems to be one for every little area of the UK, and there's kind of lots of different kind of aspects to the work that they do all over the place. But I guess, Eleanor, do you want to tell us a little bit specifically about the LWT? Much shorter, sweeter. I like that one. The LWT's work. Yeah, just kind of introduce it to the listeners as well, in case they're not familiar.
So the Wildlife Trust, as you said, is like a national movement. So we're part of a federation. So there's actually 46 wildlife trusts in total in the UK, and there's like a central office. But each wildlife trust operates independently as a charity. But what I really like about the Wildlife Trust is it is this national movement. So we do joined up campaigns, and we do have those kind of central voices at central office. So the impact of your work can be much bigger than you realise. So the Lancashire Wildlife Trust is one of the biggest. So we have about 200 staff now, which is really cool. And Youth Voice, our youth programme, is one of the biggest in the country. So we actually won an award last year, the Dame Mary Smayton Award, which was for our youth work, which was great recognition. But there's loads of great youth work going on. There's a really good one in Nottingham and Derbyshire, and we speak with each other as youth workers. So we're trying to join up kind of youth campaigns and youth governance. So I think that's a really progressive thing that we're doing. But yeah, as the Wildlife Trust's basis, we're a conservation charity. We inspire social action for conservation and the protection of nature. And we try and make reserves accessible so people, I guess, fall in love with nature again. I think there's a bit of a disconnect. I'm sure Hannah and Alex will agree. So there's just so much things going on. We do carbon farming, we do peatland restoration, we do sand dunes management, we do woodland management, we do kind of catering management on reserves, and then we also have this amazing youth program. So it's actually so much more going on behind the scenes than people might realise.
Mm-hmm. I guess even as someone from the UK, when I was doing my little research beforehand and having a look, I was looking at the number of members and everything, and the way that it seems to be. I think it was something like 800,000, more than 800,000 members across the UK. It's so much bigger than I actually I kind of could have imagined, and so many volunteers and all sorts of things doing really exciting, interesting projects. I guess making people fall in love with British wildlife again, which is so important, because I think a lot of the time, I've spoken about Madagascar and I've talked to people who work with dolphins that are kind of far away, but you don't realize that there's interesting species like dolphins and all sorts of other more kind of specialized species to the UK as well out there. And I think that's really, really important and really valuable, especially over the last few years when everyone's been kind of not able to travel maybe as far, maybe stuck in their local areas. To really get them to cherish and value what's around them has been so important. And so I think that's why your work is really, really interesting to me, at least, and hopefully really, really interesting for the listeners to kind of hear about.
It's also, I was just going to say, I think people don't realise how little nature the UK has. I think we've lost 56% of our biodiversity. We only have 13% forest cover. And we've lost 98% of our peatlands, which massive carbon storage. That's all a bit depressing, really, but that's why the work of the Wildlife Trust as a joined up movement is so important. And you don't have to be a massive bird watcher, even though some people on the youth council are massive bird watchers and they're phenomenal. They can just name all these birds from their bird calls, and they're 14 years old. It's actually so incredible. But you don't have to necessarily be into that to care about nature on your doorstep.
Mm. Yeah, that's amazing. 'Cause it's one of those things that I think about that all the time. Of like everyone thinks that there's kind of the we need to save the big kind of glamorous carnivores that are abroad, without realizing actually not that long ago there were big interesting carnivore species and things like that in the UK, and the species that we do have that are left. I think pretty sure the largest kind of carnivore that the UK has now is a badger. Like, it's really interesting that like now we don't cherish that maybe as much as we would a tiger, even though it equally is interesting and equally has all these kind of conservation hot topics surrounding it, with kind of culling and all that kind of debate going on. Like, and so yeah, it's interesting that we kind of have this, so it's somewhat detachment from our own wildlife, that we don't realize it's kind of decreasing. But yes, of course, we have young people like Hannah and Alex, who are, except I don't think I think I can, like, I'm pretty good at naming birds when I see them, but to be able to name them by just hearing their call is exceptionally impressive. And I don't think, age 14, I'm trying to remember like what I was doing. That's making me feel old now. That was 10 years ago for me. Like, I'm trying to think about what I was doing age 14, and it was probably just like playing The Sims on my computer and hoping for the best. Like, I don't think I could name a bird by its call. And we're going to talk, I think, about some of your guys' favorite UK kind of conservation issues and species in a little bit. So I'll be interested to know if either Hannah or Alex are either of those people who can do bird calls, or what your kind of favorite species to try and identify are. Um, I guess now that we've kind of introduced the wildlife trusts and kind of what they do, and what you guys do specifically in your area as well, we should really kind of hand over to the young people, the people we are kind of we've been talking about like as if they weren't here, but we should ask them. Could you tell us a little bit about the youth council and its work, and kind of what you guys do? I don't know, Hannah, do you want to kick us off and tell us a little bit about, from your perspective, what's the youth council? What do you do?
Yeah, I was also going to say about the Wildlife Trust. One of the
Hmm.
brilliant things that I've noticed, only really since being on the Youth Council, is how many tiny nature reserves there are. And
Hmm.
you hear about the massive ones, but if I go on holiday somewhere in the UK now, like, I definitely look up to see if there are some, because there are some like really tiny, really beautiful places across the UK that the Wildlife Trust manage. And I
Hmm.
think that helps it make nature more accessible. It's not all about the massive rewilding projects, as great as they are. It means that everyone can connect to nature in their own way.
Hmm. That's fantastic. Yeah, and I would agree. Like, I always think that even if you can't go to a wildlife reserve, you can kind of, if you have a garden or an outdoor space near you, you can try and encourage that to become your own little green space. And like, I planted a load of wildflower seeds earlier this year, and so like you can do these little things to kind of encourage your local spaces to become like your own little wildlife reserve. And like, there's so much going on, I guess. So in terms of the youth council, then, what kind of, apart from learning about these fantastic little nature reserves around you, what could you tell us a little bit about it, and your position on it, what you do?
Yeah, so I think the best thing about the Youth Council actually is the range of things we do.
Hmm.
So over my time on it, I've done all sorts of things. I went to the Conservative Party conference. We've done lots of sort of practical conservation. Me and Alex led the Youth Nature Assembly, which is an online thing before COP26,
Hmm.
talking about our views. And I think the nicest things have been the really random things that we didn't really expect.
Hmm.
And we've done lots of campaigns, but also the sort of thing being together as well as a group of young people who all care is really nice, and we can join up together to try and make things happen. But I think my favourite things that we've done have been the random things that we weren't really expecting, and I didn't expect to do when I joined.
Hmm. Hmm. That's, yeah, I guess that must be, it's always those curveball things that you see. Maybe like an email comes in one day and you go, yes, of course I want to do that. Or you see, you get a phone call that they're always the most fun and exciting because you don't expect them to come along. I don't know what, before we move on, Alex, we'll get to you in a second for you to tell us a little bit, what's maybe, Hannah, what's your favorite unexpected thing that you've gotten to do? What's the one that you would kind of say, this is the best thing we've got to do unexpectedly?
I think for me it was running the youth nature.
Hmm.
I can't remember what it was called now. That was the most fun thing for me, because that was fairly near the start of the youth council, and I was sort of mediating one of the rooms, and it was me and a load of 25-year-olds, and I was leading the discussion, and it was terrifying, but it kind of made me feel like I could do that sort of thing and talk to people who are way older than me confidently, which is not something that I sort of really did before the youth council. And that was brilliant because it really felt like we were doing something. Like, quite a lot of people afterwards said, how can we help? What can we do? So all the responses were kind of collected for the youth manifesto to be sort of a collective idea of what young people want from COP. And it meant we all kind of came together, and I could talk to people I would have never otherwise talked to, partly because they were like 10 years older than me, but also because I would have never really found them otherwise. And it just felt like a really nice thing to all come together.
And I honestly can't imagine being like 14 and talking to 25 year, because even when I was in high school, I remember thinking like, even when I was like maybe fifth year, thinking the sixth years who were older than me, being like, they're so much older, like they're scary, and I don't think I want to share my opinion. And so like, I'm now I'm now 24, and I still look at 25-year-olds and go like, they won't want to hear my opinion. So I'm like, I'm very impressed by that. And like, it's really interesting, especially to have influenced, or to have like put forward something that influenced or kind of had impact on COP, which was one of the biggest environmental events that we've experienced in the last few years, especially when it was in the UK. And like, that feels really special, actually. And I can see why that comes out on top of kind of the list of things, because that is really, really exciting. And as much as I would love to keep asking you about that, I feel like we've left Alex out of the discussion for too long now. So we need to loop back and say, Alex, I feel like we need to go back 3 questions and say, what's your role on the Youth Council? Could you tell us about the little things that kind of you've enjoyed as being part of it, and what you kind of have gotten up to?
And my favourite thing that I've done with the Youth Council so far, I think I got to represent the Youth Council at COP26 in November. So we did our youth programme just a couple of weeks beforehand, and then I actually got to speak at COP26 with Andy Burnham and Steve Rotherham, and then Emma Greenwood, who was on our Youth Council last year as well. And we got to talk about what we thought was important in conservation and how climate change isn't talked about enough. And that was such like my political career so far, because I'm like hugely involved in politics outside of Lancashire Wildlife Trust. And that's probably still like the best thing I've ever done in my life, and probably will be for a very long time. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to live that down. And like, I've had people come up to me since. So I did a talk with the United Nations in February, the United Nations Booth Talk in Manchester. And I had a couple of people that come up to me afterwards and said that they'd seen me at COP26 and had come to watch me speak at the UN because they'd seen how good I was at COP. And that was sort of like almost like a reality check, I guess, really. Like, I've actually impacted, like, things that I've said have impacted how people have thought about things. Yeah, but the Youth Council's opened so many doors, and I've met so many amazing people, and I'm genuinely, like, I'm watching Hannah as well. I just have to get a little shout out to Hannah here, because when I met you, when you started, you were so shy. You didn't talk to anyone. And like, just watching you speak now, I'm like, oh my God, you've come on so far. You are a little superstar.
You are a superstar, both of you are. I feel like so proud of you.
And it's fantastic, because this will now be immortalized forever, of like, you complimenting each other and giving each other references you can point to in the future and be like, look how nice everyone was. When Alex is eventually Prime Minister, Hannah, you can turn around and say, she said really nice things about me on a podcast. It makes sense. COP, UN, it's the next step. Like, it's that's fantastic. And yes, I'm genuinely like awestruck, like, because I feel like a lot of people get this impression of sometimes when youth are involved in conservation, it's kind of in this kind of tokenistic way almost, where you're like, oh well, we have this person here, so we have a youth representative, but it's just kind of to have them sit there and smile and say that their opinions are, but they don't actually get to do much. They don't get to get their teeth in. But it sounds like you both really are like involved in really important, high profile projects. That sounds so exciting. I don't know, does it feel that way for you? Did you like, I suppose, how you must feel really valued. How does that make you feel, as like, get your voice out there?
Definitely. I think one thing that I would say about the Wildlife Trust and the Youth Council is that I've done a lot of roles in the last couple of months where for other projects that have been like, you're just going to sit here at this table and you're going to smile and nod and tick a box. But the Lancashire Wildlife Trust and the Youth Council like genuinely try hard to get us involved, and like they're offering us shadowing opportunities, conservation opportunities, taking us out to events that we wouldn't normally get the opportunity to go to, taking us, a meeting, showing us to people and letting us meet people and having our voice heard. And I think Eleanor puts it really nicely at the beginning of meetings. When we have meetings, we do it the young people way and not the adult way. Everything is young people led and not, if we want to do things differently, we can do things differently. It's not just about how the normal way of doing things is.
That's really exciting, actually. And like you kind of I suppose you touched on it there, but I think that's a good thing to maybe go into a bit more. Is like, what is the day-to-day running when you're not influencing the world on a global stage? What is kind of the normal day-to-day running? I don't know, Hannah, do you want to take that one? Like, what is your normal meetings? Like, how often are you meeting? What kind of stuff are you up to when you're meeting regularly? Like, tell us a little bit about that aspect.
Yeah, so we've got quarterly meetings 4 times a year,
Mm-hmm.
where we sort of make bigger decisions, kind of decide where we're going with things. And that's also nice because we all meet up in person and we can kind of actually talk to each other face to face. But then otherwise, we meet up a lot for different things. So yesterday I was filming on a peat bog, and just there isn't really a day to day because everything's so different. But we do end up meeting up quite a lot, often sort of maybe 5 of us doing this, 10 of us doing that. And then we've got a Teams page as well, so, and a WhatsApp group, so we sort of all stay in contact through that.
That's good. That's, yeah, and I guess it must be good to actually have found like a group of like conservation people who you can chat with and be really passionate about. Are you all, I assume, aside from the group, like good friends as well? Like, do you get along on that aspect? Hannah? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really nice because there's such a big group of people, like people who are interested in politics, people who are doing like maths and physics and want to go into sort of engineering, and quite a lot of people who are birders and interested in conservation. And I think that's really nice because we don't just want people who want jobs in conservation to care about nature. We kind of need everyone to care and want to do things, even if that's not what their career path looks like.
I think that's, yeah, it's the more that I realize. And I think on the last few episodes I've spoken to a couple of people where I kind of talked to an artist who wanted to get involved in conservation and so now sells her art and gives 10% of the kind of proceeds to charity. I talked to people who just like talking and so created a podcast. And so it's getting the people who aren't necessarily, they don't have the classic kind of conservation-y background. Everyone thinks we have to be scientists who have really extensive, like all have PhDs and have all written 10 articles and all this. I think this is the perfect example of how anyone can be in conservation, no matter kind of what your background and what kind of age, interests. Yeah, it goes to prove a point really, really well, I think. I suppose when you're kind of meeting and discussing things and kind of what kind of other, do you ever get to go out you said you were on a peat bog the other day. What kind of practical activities do you get to do? I know you mentioned, Hannah, you like to do the kind of practical stuff. Will we start with you and then Alex can maybe tell us about some of the practical things you like to be involved in to do with conservation as well?
Yes, we've done all sorts. We've done quite a lot on peat bogs, sort of transplanting cotton grass and doing all sorts. We've done a couple of days. And then I think it's really nice because we kind of get to see a bit of everything. We were on some sand dunes a little while ago doing iNaturalist and being part of citizen science and doing a litter pick, and we just kind of get to see it all, which is quite nice because I kind of am looking for a job in conservation and I feel like I've got a good view, like an aerial view of everything that is in the Wildlife Trust because there's so much. Yeah, but we've done all sorts of sort of practical things.
That's really exciting. And I before I come over to you, Alex, I don't know, I mentioning peat bogs always reminds me of one of my friends was doing a PhD and it was studying peat bogs. And my sister, every time she would be like, "Oh, Jack," he was also called Jack, be like, "Oh, what's Jack studying?" I'd say, "Oh, peat bogs." And she'd go, "Who?" And I'm like, it's not a person. It's not a person. Like, and I don't know whether she knew it was a bad joke or like if it was if she just didn't clock it. But I was like, okay, we'll give you that one as a bad joke that you were actually studying a person called Peat Bogs. But no, it's a bad one.
Exactly. We were like laughing our heads off yesterday filming because we were making like Instagram reels for the campaign, and we were like, we should get everybody called Pete to come to the Peat Bogs. And we thought it was so funny. So if there's any Pete's out there, any listeners, come to our Peat Bog, please.
And once you've got all the base level Pete's, you can start going for get Peter Andre, go for celebrity Pete's, like Pete Davidson. There's a couple out there. Yeah.
I think we should get just a Peter Andre cutout and just have him there. As a tourist attraction, get people to Peter Andre on the Peat Bog.
Just consistently playing Mysterious Girl over and over and over again. I'm sure the local wildlife would love that. It might clear a couple of invasive species out who just are like, nope, don't want to deal with this.
The trees will just up and leave and be like, don't like Peter
Andre. Before the Peter Andre people come and start, I'm sorry any listeners who are big fans of Peter Andre. Let's move to Alex. What kind of practical activities do you enjoy doing? What are the kind of interesting stuff that you've been involved in that kind of way?
So we've done all sorts of different types of things, especially over the last few months. But I think a lot of the practical stuff that we do, like we've learned to light fires and make bird boxes, and teaching us to do those practical things that would help us in the future, whether we go into conservation or not, is genuinely helpful. And I think a lot of young people don't have the chance to access those things. So offering them, helps support us and helps young people's confidence as well, that they can do things like that. I also do really enjoy going out in the peat bog. It's something like, because I live in Manchester, it's in the peat bog we usually go to is in Earlham, and it's like a half an hour train ride, and it's literally in Salford. Like, a lot of people don't realise that this huge big green peat bog is on their doorstep in the middle of a city. It always rains when we go though, so downside, it does always rain when we go, but I do really enjoy going to the peat bog because it's something that I didn't know an awful lot about until I joined the Wildlife Trust. And we hear about climate change and things like that, and how peat is massively impacting our climate. We often think of faraway places and places that are in the Peak District or in other countries that are so far away, and we're so out of touch with like where these places are, when literally a really big peat bog is on our doorstep in the middle of a city.
I was just going to say on that, the peat bog we went to is being sort of restored by the Wildlife Trust. And when I went yesterday, even compared to probably about 6 months ago when we went, it was so alive. It was just so nice. There were like swifts everywhere. We saw a hare, and it just felt so nice to we could really see that, because even sort of 6 months ago, it was quite far along the path. It had been like re-wetted and everything. But compared to yesterday it just felt so vibrant and alive. It was really nice.
I think what we were talking about this in the meeting we had over the weekend, seeing comparison pictures of what it was like when the Wildlife Trust initially took it over and what it looks like now, and like knowing that we've been a part of that, and like going helping cut down trees to stop the bog from drying out, and going and replanting cotton plants. And it's all those little tiny things that people don't realise make such a huge difference, and seeing how far that peat bog has come along now is genuinely like amazing.
That's fantastic. I guess what might be a good idea is I suppose, like, for any listeners who aren't fully aware of like what a peat bog is and what you're restoring, what like you're trying to get back to, who, Hannah or Alex,
Hannah is our peat expert by now.
Our peat expert. How would you explain to someone who's listening to this and going, I have no idea what a peat bog is and what they kind of may have started with and what they're aiming towards? What does a functioning peat bog look like, and what are you kind of shooting for?
Yeah, so don't worry, people who don't know what peat is, because I consider myself, I think I know a lot about nature, and I didn't know what it was before I joined the youth council. So a peat bog is a wetland environment. It's quite specialist. It's very unusual. So it's very acidic, and it there's special moss on the peatland that goes down into the soil and is preserved. So it captures carbon. And Eleanor will correct me, but I think it's globally twice as much as rainforests, and we don't hear about it. And it's
also called sphagnum moss.
I'd forgotten what it was called. They and they're drained and used for compost and horticulture. So what we were doing yesterday was filming reels about how they're used in house plants and how we can sort of change that. And what the Wildlife Trust is doing is taking a peat bog that was completely sort of brown soil, very dry, and making it into a really biodiverse, beautiful habitat by re-wetting it, planting cotton grass, which is a type of grass that does very well there. And it's a very it's not a habitat you find a lot because it's drained and used so much for compost, that the ones we have left are very important to preserve, because the species that live on peat bogs aren't doing very well because there aren't many left.
It also takes 1,000 years for 1 meter of peat to form, so it's a really long process, and essentially we're just trying to speed that up and restore peatland.
And I guess, yeah, it's an interesting one to highlight, because I guess people think that planting things in their gardens and using compost and trying to as I was saying, I planted wildflowers earlier this year to watch them grow, and for compost, peat is a common ingredient in some, and you can buy peat free compost, and it's an interesting kind of awkward thing where you kind of have to be like, oh yes, plant plants in your area, encourage things to grow, but also when you're doing it, you have to be sustainable. So it's a really interesting, complex scenario you've got to kind of work around there. So it's really interesting to hear more about kind of, yes, how you're restoring it and what you're doing.
I was going to say, I think an important role where the youth council comes in this. So we've been running the peat free campaign, the Wildlife Trust, since the 1980s, forever. And there's a peat ban coming on bag compost in 2024, and that's because of pressure from organisations like the Wildlife Trust. But the youth council come in and work with our peatland communication officers and our peatland initiative officers to bring a fresh perspective to it, to reach audiences who don't know about peat. So we're trying to educate secondary school children. So that's kind of one of the roles where they give back to the organisation by helping us progress our campaigns and reach different audiences.
That's really interesting, actually. And I guess as well, even with things like Instagram Reels that you were filming the other day, I know I've had discussions with people who work for conservation organizations who are in the kind of communications positions, but have no idea how reels work, or have no idea how kind of TikTok or any of these websites work, because they didn't grow up with those kind of social medias. They don't use them as much. So it's great that you're able to kind of come in and help with the kind of educational, I suppose, aspect as well. Is it, I assume, for the kind of, where are these kind of not TikTok reels going? Where can people see them and kind of educate themselves more? Is it onto the main kind of accounts and things?
Shout out, follow us.
Yeah, I was going to say self-promotion time.
Yeah.
Where can people see them?
You can follow us. We only recently got a youth, we call it a youth voice social media channel, so on Instagram, and it's at Wilder Youth. So Wilder Youth is also another young people group we have. It's youth nature awareness and campaigning group. So it focuses mostly on being accessible to young people, and they're running a campaign on actions for insects. So looking at how important insects are for us. But yeah, follow us on Instagram, please. We have lots of content.
Yes, actually, while you mentioned them, because I was looking on the website, and there's kind of the youth council and then Wilder Youth. Eleanor, could you tell us a little bit about maybe Wilder Youth and what the distinction is there?
Yeah, Wilder Youth is like my little baby. So I was here in September, and it's because the Youth Council only has 15 positions, but we got 60 applicants this year. So where do the rest of the young people go? And also the Youth Council, as Hannah and Alex can say, is like a job, isn't it? It's quite intense. So yeah, Wilder Youth is just an online group, an online community where you get added to it. There's no application process. You just have to register and be within our area and in the age group, so 11 to 25. And we look at running our own campaigns. The focus is on action for insects. So our campaign is called Small Spaces for Small Creatures. And we're just trying to inspire community action, like you said, Jack, about like planting wildflowers in your garden or buying boxes to put on your window and helping to inspire people to create nature wherever they can. And we ask for about 2 hours per month in that group. And then we do like online skill sessions as well. So learning is a really big part, I think, of the Youth Council and of Wilder Youth. So not just building your skills in specific nature topics, but climate change and how it connects to nature, engaging with young people, social action. So if people want to join in that age group, then please join. And again, it brings young people together who maybe feel like they're the environmental one in their friend group and they want somebody else to talk to. It's a great place to come along and just connect with other young people on topics, but with not too much time commitment, so you can do it around.
It must have been so encouraging as well to see all of these applications. It must have been so encouraging, but also terrifying to be like, I now have to pick. I don't know how you would have managed that. Like, because I feel like when you have 60 really enthusiastic young people step forward, you'd want to have the biggest council in the world. But it's fantastic that you found another way to kind of include everyone and not kind of knock them back and say, nope, we don't. Because it's about, I think conservation, as we were just talking about, is about kind of getting everyone involved from no matter what their background is and kind of encouraging everyone. So that's a fantastic kind of solution to that kind of good problem that you almost face there. So that's fantastic.
Young people about. What a shame. It was a very hard selection process, but it's what it is.
Yes. Now, I've asked you about kind of the council and what you do and some of the different activities, and I was going to ask what your kind of finish off this kind of first little bit of chat. I was going to ask what activities you're proudest of, but we kind of covered that maybe in the kind of first section with all of the UN and things that I'm still so impressed about and just can't fully comprehend my mind. That I'm jealous. I'm very, very jealous. But like, apart from that, is there any other projects that you're really proud of that you'd like to kind of mention? I don't know, Hannah, should we start with you? Is there anything that you haven't mentioned yet that you're really proud of that you'd like to mention?
I'm trying to think now. You've put me on the spot. The Peat Free campaign is one of the newest things to me that I hadn't really thought about before, which has been really informative and amazing just being there. But I don't know. They've all been so good.
I was going to say, you've done so much that I'm like, getting you to pick one seems very, very hard. It's like, trying to pick your favorite child or your favorite whatever it is. I don't think it's possible. Alex, what about you?
I was just going to say, Hannah, you can mention your blog.
Oh yeah, I wrote a blog last year, and again, that was something I'd really never done before. I was like, okay, how do I do this? But I really enjoyed writing that. Actually, it was and it got reposted by the Meteor, I think. And it was I really enjoyed writing that. But I think as well with Youth Council, it's things like that, like working out how to make PowerPoints and then speak in front of them. That was something I was like, I don't know how to do that, and now I do. So things like that have been really great.
Yeah, I guess that's all the little kind of skills that you pick up that you didn't realize you would learn must be really exciting. Like, and it makes me very nervous that there's people 10 years behind me that are far more well equipped and skilled than I am. I'm like, oh no, there's younger models coming along that are way more savvy in conservation than I am. I need to get everything I want to do done right now before you all kind of move on to your adult careers. This is it's making me nervous. Alex, what about you? What are kind of your proudest achievements? What things that you maybe haven't mentioned yet that you'd like to give a shout out to?
There are so many, and it's kind of hard to pick one, but sort of like a really cool moment actually. So a few weeks ago, I went to we have a friend whose little girl was and a little boy was having a birthday, and they'd wrapped their Pass the Parcel present in a magazine so the Lancashire Wildlife Trust has their own magazine, the Lapwing magazine. And the issue that they had used to wrap the Pass the Parcel present was an issue that had an article about our youth council in it. And so my face was on the Pass the Parcel wrapping paper, and they hadn't realised until we were opening it. I was like, wait a minute, that's my face. And it was such like a weird little moment. I was like, this is so weird. I didn't think, we were all in shock for a good 10 minutes about oh my God, how did we not even notice when we were doing this? But so that was like a really cool little moment. But yeah, there have been so many like awesome moments with the youth camp, and just like little things when it's like those little achievements where it's like I built a bird box from scratch by myself with a real saw and didn't lose any limbs. Like the little moments as well that we've been able to achieve.
Mm-hmm. I think that's fantastic. And the little things are sometimes, as we've learned now, the biggest, most impactful things. Because now, yeah, you'll be churning out bird boxes now. You've done one. You're gonna have to, like, you won't be able to stop. Oh,
I've just remembered something now. I've thought
uh-huh.
at the Conservative conference, I and a couple of other youth council members talked to Craig Bennett, who's like the top of the Wildlife Trust, and that was another one of those really scary. And again, I was like, okay, I'm 14, I don't really have a clue, but it was very nice, and I've got good at talking to like people who are like way more qualified than me and like very important in making decisions. But that was nice because he was just really nice, and we were talking about the youth council and him wanting to do more youth work, and that felt like, oh, we're actually doing things and changing things. So yeah, that was really nice.
I feel
That's
like
amazing.
sorry, Jack. I was going to say sometimes I feel like you guys undersell yourself because
I
you're
was going to say the same thing.
like,
I was going to jump in and say it because I was like, no, 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 no. Sorry, Eleanor, but Eleanor, you keep going. But no, I agree with everything she's about to say. You two.
yeah. I think you're like, yeah, we do lots of stuff, but like, they've gained AQAs and like practical conservation, so they come out with qualifications that they've achieved.
Mm-hmm.
They've gained the John Muir Award, which is a conservation award. They've consulted on like our marketing, so for like membership for young people. They consulted on our 10-year business plan. So we actually have a 5-year youth voice plan that is in the business case, which is like a really important part of governance, and their voice is in that. Like we've never had that before within our trust. They have been consulted on different campaigns, like not just peat free, but like we've done we run the filed coast on the sand dunes, so like they've helped out on coastal projects. They're going to the Northwest Marine Steering Group projects and consulting on campaigns there and helping out at events. Like you met Craig Bennett, who's the CEO of the Wildlife Trust, and like he knows who you are. Like, like he also follows our Instagram. So like the head office really know who our youth council are. So sometimes I think you undersell yourself. You're like, oh, we did this, but actually, like your impact on governance is changing the way our organisation is working. So don't undersell yourself, guys.
Yeah, and also the underselling that stood out to me was when you said I'm only 14, because I think for like you are two of the most eloquent speakers I've had on the podcast who sound like you know way more than everyone else. Like it's so I think age has nothing to do with it. I think even if like you've had less time than everyone else maybe to get involved, you have done so much within that smaller amount of time that like it fully justifies you being a guest on this show, being at the US, doing all of these cop things, doing all of the things that Eleanor just listed. Like, I think age has absolutely zero to do with it because, as I said, at age 14, I was probably sat in kind of my room playing The Sims all the time, and that's like conservation. So you have used your time far better than me, I think, is basically what I'm trying to say. And yeah, even if you feel like sometimes you're not an expert and you haven't read out all the books on something, so emotion and passion are just as important when it comes to conservation. And yeah, you seem to both be overflowing with that aspect. So yes, I think you're
I
getting
think as well on that, like Hannah saying that I'm only 14 with so much confidence because I'm almost 19 now. Like a lot of the youth opportunities that are available are becoming less and less because I'm sort of moving out of that age bracket. But knowing that I'm leaving behind young people like Hannah and like our youth council fills me with so much confidence that I never used to have. Like knowing that once I move away, there's going to be young people behind me that are far more like skilled than I ever was. That genuinely fills me with so much confidence and happiness, knowing that once I leave, things are going to get even better.
I was also going to say that's one of the good things about the youth council is it's such a wide age bracket, and we've got sort of people from 13 to 25, I think, all talking together, and it was really hard to find opportunities at 13 when I joined, And this one was like, oh, they actually want me. It felt like really nice. And I think some people are kind of scared off doing that because of like safeguarding and maybe a very big age gap between us and the people organising it, and just how nice it is that the youth council doesn't do that, and we can sort of have people throughout the age range.
I think that's fantastic, and it's a great kind of inclusive way to get people together and get them talking and getting ideas shared between kind of people and experiences shared and like what to look out for between the older guys and the younger ones. Like it's really interesting. I guess I was going to ask these questions in a slightly different order, but I think this is a perfect segue into like Alex. You mentioned you're now kind of reaching the older age of the kind of group, and you're looking at like looking forward now instead of just kind of looking back on time and opportunities that are the people who are coming up behind you. Looking forward, where is it you want to go kind of with all of these experiences and all of these things that you've done? Like what kind of career do you see yourself going into conservation? Do you see it remaining kind of a hobby? Do you see what kind of like what looking forward is this kind of provided you with, and what do you want to do?
So when I joined the Youth Council, I was actually the Member of Youth Parliament for Manchester, and my term ended March just gone, and I'm just about to move on and start my degree in politics at MMU, and I'm looking more towards a career in politics, but I will always have a passion for conservation. My parents run a a nature centre. So I'll still be going back to help them. And just because I eventually come to the end of my work with the Youth Council does not mean I'm leaving the Lancashire Wildlife Trust behind. They have provided me with so much like skills and opportunities, and I have genuinely found like such a love for conservation, and just working with them has genuinely changed my life, and I will never forget that. So leaving the Lancashire Wildlife Trust is, it's never going to happen. But like, just because I'm not on the Youth Council, you've not got rid of me. But I think I would love to become an MP and actually sit in Parliament and, take on all those skills that I've learned over the last 2 years and use them to change the way that we look at conservation and change the way that we tackle the climate crisis, because the heart of change is at Parliament, and Parliament isn't doing enough. And I want to be there to make sure that, obviously I'd just be like one MP, so I wouldn't be that big, but steering change like I have done in the Wildlife Trust in Parliament would be a dream come true. And, maybe Alex Kennedy for Prime Minister one day. You never know.
I'll wait for you.
Yep. I think, because people with those skill sets and those backgrounds, I think, are severely lacking in some areas of like, we need people who know and love nature to be in there to kind of bring it up and make sure it's at the forefront of discussion. And so, I think that's a fantastic end goal, I suppose. And yes, I'll look forward to seeing you as Prime Minister one day, rewilding and doing all of the great conservation things across the UK. And my degree was in, my undergraduate degree was in international relations, so politics adjacent. And so yes, I think it equips you very well for being conservation y but also politically minded. So yes, that will be fantastic, I think, for you. And like once you get to uni, the great thing is that you can kind of steer the projects and the things that you want to read and the things you want to do. So I kind of by the end I wrote my dissertation on anthropocentrism and like our relationship with animals and laws and things about animals. So you can still, even in the political realm of study, like make it nature focused, which I think will be really, really exciting and interesting for you to kind of do, because it's what I did and I loved it. So yes, really, really interesting. I guess Hannah, you have a little bit longer to go probably before we're saying we don't need your whole life plan. We don't need to like you still have a few more years to work all that out, but like on a kind of right now, do you see yourself like running with conservation? Like what is looking forward for you? How has this kind of informed you and like made impacted your life and your plan going forward?
Yeah, so I've wanted to be in like with working with animals and conservation since I was about 4. But this being on the youth council has kind of, I think before I was on the youth council, I kind of assumed I'd go abroad. And I still might do that, but I'm kind of thinking now, well, maybe I don't need to, because I can't cope with hot weather. So maybe, and also because it's a bit more underappreciated. You can work with whole ecosystems, and there is nature here, and it might not be as glamorous, but I can very much see myself in conservation in the UK in the future.
That's fantastic, actually, and that's brilliant because I think I was exactly the same in that I thought I had this idea figured out of what I wanted to do and where I wanted to impact, and because when we grow up, I guess all the documentaries we see on TV and all of these things, you see sea turtles running to the ocean in the Mediterranean, or you see kind of elephants or tigers, or you see polar bears or things far away or abroad or in these sunny, very photogenic for TV places. You don't necessarily see the kind of local stories. So I think, that's fantastic that you've kind of, I guess, fallen in love with nature, which is, I guess, tying back to what we started at the beginning. That's what the kind of whole goal of the Wildlife Trust is. So big tick there for success. And also leads nicely onto, I'm glad I reorganized these questions because it leads nicely onto the next thing I wanted to ask you about, which I think is kind of, we're an underappreciated conservation story podcast. We've talked about all sorts of, I think talking about youth voice is already underappreciated, and I think we need to get more voices out there. So I'm glad we've covered that. But another aspect, I think, the kind of alongside the youth voice is this local love of conservation here in the UK. So I wanted to ask everyone what their favorite kind of underappreciated maybe UK conservation story or species is, that you'd like to bring to the listeners' attention. And I don't know, who shall we go first? I don't know, Eleanor, do you want to start? Do you have one in your mind that you're kind of thinking of?
Underappreciated. Oh, I don't know. I feel like we've talked about peat a lot because I did
Mm-hmm.
environmental science, so I do love soil. So I think maybe just the conservation of soil is really important within
Mm-hmm.
agricultural practices, within land managers. So that could be anybody from councils to estates to farmers. So I think, the conservation of soil is very important because soil is where everything happens. And I think that connects into mycelium, so fungi, mushrooms. I think we
Mm-hmm.
don't appreciate mushrooms enough either because they are what hold our whole ecosystems together, really. So I'd say, look up soil, look up mushrooms, read the book Dirt by David Montgomery. It's amazing. That would be my answer.
That's a good one. And I feel like my life changed when I started appreciating mushrooms and things, because I remember walking into Chester Zoo the first day of the youth symposium, and the first thing you see when you walk into Chester Zoo are elephants. That's what you're meant to look at as you first walk in. And I remember turning a corner and looking at a tree stump and going, "Look at that mushroom." And my friend who I was with was just like, what are you looking at? There's elephants. So I was like, no, this is look at this. This is the interesting thing. So I agree. I appreciate these kind of maybe less talked about stranger things like mushrooms
And it's
and
like
soil.
every tree has mushroom
Mm-hmm.
connected to it, like a mushroom system, except for sycamores, I think, and some other random ones. So it's like you see the mushroom, but underneath the ground in the soil, there's all these other mushrooms that are keeping our land taken over. And if you use pesticides on a field, it can kill
Mm-hmm.
the mycelium network for 50 years. So we're using all these pesticides, and you're literally killing all these amazing networks of mushrooms in the earth, but you don't even see it, so you don't ever think about it. So I think there's just so much intricacies within nature that we don't, I guess, appreciate or think about. You
Mm-hmm.
kind of can only see what you. It's look beyond what you can see.
Yes, because I think once I started working in a botanic garden, I noticed these things everywhere, and you don't realize how much they are everywhere and where they are until you make yourself aware. So that's a good start. I don't know who wants. Hannah, do you want to go next? What your
Yeah,
underappreciated species or?
I'm not sure. I'm not one of the people on the youth council who are brilliant at birds, although that is
Mhm.
probably the thing I'm best at. I'm quite interested in sort of ecology, and that's that kind of links to what Eleanor said. But I think that because the UK doesn't have many sort of megafauna, sort of charismatic species, although there are sort of some bigger mammals, I think just all of sort the things that you we do have that are often underappreciated, like insects and funguses and all sorts. I don't know, I'm not sure, but generally the landscape and the ecosystem and the less glamorous obvious species.
Yes, and that's the thing. I think when we refer to charismatic like megafauna all the time of like these big things that you see on the poster childs for conservation, but then when you look like even the kind of I guess the most mega of the fauna here, as I've said before, is maybe like badger or deer or like red squirrels are an interesting one. Like there's so many interesting species here that are they're kind of could I think should still be classed as charismatic, but yeah are discussed a lot less maybe when the when the conservation conversation comes up. That's a tongue twister. But yeah, that's really interesting. And Alex, what about you?
I think one of the most underappreciated things in like UK wildlife is our insects. They make up such a huge part of our ecosystem, and a lot of people see them as pests, or especially like people who are not involved in wildlife and conservation would see them as like pests or annoying, and like people like bees and wasps and spiders. And admittedly, I do have a fear of wasps and spiders, but it doesn't mean I don't appreciate them. Like, and how they impact our environment. And 20 years ago, you would have gone out in a car, and you would have insects stuck to your windshield and onto your license plate. I'm 18 years old, and I've never once witnessed that in my 18 years of existence. And it just proves like how fast our insect species are declining. And I wish people would realize that how much we can do for them. And like just as simple as drilling holes into some of the bricks into your house so that bees can make homes, or just supporting growing plants that support those small insect colonies. The little things that we can do to help save our insects that genuinely so underappreciated and overlooked in the world of conservation.
I'm changing my answer to spiders. Spiders are great. I love spiders.
Good answer. I think so. Great answer. Because I think there's like species of spider in the UK that are endangered, and like people wouldn't know that because they don't get talked about. So I think that's a really interesting, a good choice. It's almost like you three coordinated, even though you were like, oh, I don't know. You coordinate because you've got like plants and fungi. You've then got animals and kind of megafauna, fauna, and then we moved on to like the insects and the creepy crawlies. So I think we've covered all bases there of like generally everything in the UK is underappreciated and we need to talk about it more, which I think is a great kind of conclusion to that little segment that I always like to ask. I guess the other thing that I always like to ask to kind of get us wrapping up a little bit is I always like to ask people who are involved in conservation for a piece of advice. So if someone's listening to this and is feeling inspired or has really enjoyed kind of hearing your stories and hearing your voices and what you've said and wants to get involved, like what kind of advice would you want to give them? I don't know. Hannah, do you want to start us on this one? What would your piece of advice be for a listener?
I think my piece of advice would be do things. It sounds very obvious, but like you might think you can't do things. Also, find people. I found the youth council by just emailing everyone. Like, put effort into finding, ideally, a group, because it really helps to be with people and not doing it by yourself. But take the actions you can, and you don't have to be a conservationist. You could work in any sector and still care.
That is a good piece of advice. And the find people advice is good advice because like the whole thing about running a podcast is I'm constantly emailing or like looking for people to be on and chat to. And the most of the time when you say, can I chat to you about your project, people will be interested and genuinely want to like chat. And like there are always more people out there who are interested in conservation and talking about either what they're doing or what they want to do. So I think that's a fantastic piece of advice. Eleanor, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I would say my approach is don't. How do I describe that? I would say don't be afraid of people's titles. I've been like, okay, I'm going to go talk to the CEO, or I'm going to email this MP, or I'm going to go and ask the senior conservation or director of conservation of this, because they are just generally people and people with skills and people with experience for sure. But don't let the barriers of a title or a position hold you back. If you have an issue that you think is really important in your area, find a senior person, speak to them about it, and really just put yourself out there. But if you're a shy person, you don't like doing that, I'd just echo what Hannah said: find your tribe and find your position within it. It can be a logistical side, it can be an artsy side. It doesn't have to be, out on podcasts or speaking to people on stage. Find your position within that group, because everything you do is important, no matter what your role is.
Yeah, again, I couldn't agree more with that. And the title thing especially, I think, resonates with me, and for a similar reason of I talked to about with Hannah's is doing the podcast, I've had to email CEOs or this person or that person, and genuinely you'll be shocked how nice everyone is, because I feel like you're always the CEO of a charity or a business or whatever it is always portrayed as being a very serious, we need to do business things and we need to do this and that and the next thing, but in fact actually, really charismatic and nice, and breaking those barriers down, and talking to people, even if it's even if it's just a local person, your friends, your family, your mums, your dads, your guardians, your grandparents, whoever it is, just getting that little bit of chatting with anyone, I think is a good place to start. And so, last but not least, I've left you to last twice now, Alex, right at the start and again now. But what would the final piece of advice for listeners, what would it be?
I think my advice sort of summarizes both of these. You and your opinion matter, no matter how small or insignificant you feel you are. When I started doing a lot of my political and climate activism, I genuinely felt like no one wanted to listen to me, and I strayed away from opportunities because I had really bad imposter syndrome, and I still do get it from time to time. But realizing that, like Eleanor said, those people with the big labels and job titles are just people, and reaching out to people and not being afraid to ask questions, and realizing that you and your opinion matter just as much as the CEO's opinion. They will always be grateful for hearing your ideas, because you might put things they haven't thought of. Just be yourself and remember that you and your opinion matter, and you are not as insignificant as you think you are.
That's fantastic again, because and yes, I'm trying to find relatable stories in my life, and I think this is another one where I actually do have a relatable story, in that with the Chester Zoo Youth Symposium, when I first saw that come up, I didn't know if I wanted to do it, because I was will people want to hear from me? In submitting that application, I have managed to meet so many fantastic people who I've had on the show, who have just become genuinely really good friends with. And of course, met Eleanor there, and that led me to you chatting to Hannah and Alex, and just putting these ideas, putting yourself out there and having confidence that you're good enough to do these things, present at the conference that I did, or for your UN or COP or whatever it is, you all of these things that you've done, are really, really important, and matter a lot, and can lead to even more fantastic, great opportunities to connect with other people. And great advice. I wholeheartedly, for any listeners out there, I wholeheartedly endorse all three pieces of these advice. Excellent advice.
Networking, unfortunately, is probably a curse and a blessing. Is the biggest thing in conservation. If you're in uni, go out and find people in conservation and start networking now, because it's so much easier to get a job, which is kind of maybe a bad thing, but also a good thing. I'm not sure. It could be better.
Yeah, it's a little bit, it's because I suppose networking, you break down those barriers, and you meet people, and so if you're a confident person, try and chat to someone on the phone. But even talk, if you're a nervous person who doesn't like networking, even just sending an email and getting your name, people will clock who you are and be I'm sure I have talked to them before, or I'm sure I've done whatever. That's a start. And I think
one thing I've learned from networking is pretend everyone knows who you are. Even people that I've only met once, I will still go up to them and go, "Oh, hiya, how are you doing?" and be really big and loud, because that is how people remember you next time. And eventually people just get used to you coming up to them and being loud, and that is how people remember who you are. I've met so many politicians and things, and even though they've probably never even heard of me, or I'll still walk up to them like I've known them since the day I was born. Hi, how are you doing? And be really loud, because that is how people remember you.
Yep. And yeah, like making it seem like you're an important, like just be like, I am that I am. You should know who, even if you don't know who I am, you should know who I am. That is the energy to go into life with, not just conservation. Like,
Yeah.
I like putting yourself out there as you are VIP. Like, that's the way to go about it.
Be loud and take up space.
Yes, 100%. And yes, and on that very encouraging note, it brings me to my final question, which is always the kind of, where should people go if they're kind of local to where you guys are? Where should they go to learn more and maybe get involved? Or if people are further afield and maybe just want to kind of learn a bit more about your work, where should they go? I guess, Eleanor, you're probably the best person to field this question. What would you kind of encourage people to go towards?
So as always, you can visit the Lancashire Wildlife Trust website. So the Youth Council have a specific page on there. I really encourage you to check it out. Do follow us on Instagram, so that's Wilder Youth. You can also follow the Lancashire Wildlife Trust main channels, so they're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everything. If you're not within our area, the Wildlife Trust website as a whole, so there will be a Wildlife Trust in your area, so check out their website. I'd also encourage you to follow Alex on Instagram as well. She posts a lot of things that are happening, so you can at yourself, Alex Kennedy. And also just have a Google as well. So if there's no youth stuff in your area, email your Wildlife Trust, because they're probably thinking about setting it up. They just don't know where to get young people. So I'd say, yeah, reach out on any Wildlife Trust website.
I think that's perfect. And yes, I will put links to everyone and everything that you want me to put in the description for this episode. So listeners can go down to the description and find everything they need to find right down there, and click and follow and do all those things and get involved. And while they're down there, they can also find all of our information. So we're at Pangolin Podcast on everything. We keep it nice and simple. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. And now also, because I'm trying to be young and cool, we're on TikTok. So we're working that out as we go. So yes, we're on all of those things. If you'd like to follow us on there, we're also you can subscribe to the podcast on your streaming service of choice, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts from, you can subscribe and rate us and leave us a nice review. So you can do that as well. But yeah, that kind of, with all of that kind of promotion and chat done, I could talk to you probably for another hour, because I feel like with 3 guests, I've thirded the time I get to talk to each of you. It was a mistake, but it's been a fantastic time. And I just want to say a massive thank you to listeners, of course, but also, to finish us off, a massive thank you to you 3 for making the time to chat to me all about your fantastic work. I feel like I've learned a lot. I feel so encouraged to, like, there are people, like, knowing there are people like you, Hannah and Alex, that are doing fantastic work, when I at your age I was definitely not. So it's fantastic to know, like, exactly, like, what's going on, and, like, so encouraging. So thank you all so much for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, you are young and cool. You could be on the youth council. You're in the age range.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Be confident, like Alex said.
Yes. I've just got slightly more wrinkles, slightly more. That's why I've got my fringe to, like, push it down and hide. One of my friends once said to me that, like, she is from Hong Kong and she has lived in Scotland for so long. And she said to me, she was like, Jack, just know that because you're a Scottish man, you have limited young years left. Eventually, it all goes downhill. I was like, what? So quickly? I'm only 24. Why are you warning me of this now? Like, granted, yes, Scottish people do tend to age not the most beautifully, but still, while I have the young energy, I will exert it.
Yeah. More green tea. You'll be fine.
Yes, exactly. I'll just cover my face in, like, creams and moisturizers for every day, constantly. And on that, like, rather strange note, I suppose we should probably end. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Eleanor, so much. And yes, until next time, goodbye, everyone.